Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this webinar today. Today we got presenters Mark Holton, who's going to be talking about business advisory software, what the industry is using in 2020. And we have Matthew Karakalakis from AMK Law in Adelaide and Melbourne, key intellectual property law principles. Good afternoon, Mark. How are you?
Well, thanks, Peter. Yourself?
Great, thanks. Yeah. And Matthew, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you, Peter.
Thank you, and welcome, and thank you for both of you. To our listeners, if you have any questions, can you go to chat on your computer and type in your question, thanks, or email through to me, peter@essbiztools.com.au. If you're watching this video at a later time, or you're watching on the live feed on Facebook, because you can't just go to chat if you're on Facebook. Business advisory software, what's the industry using in 2020? It's my pleasure to introduce Mark Holton, Director of Smith Inc. Proprietary Limited. So Mark, I'm going to switch across to you, and
Peter,
you'll be able to, you're on screen.
Okay, Peter, have you shared the screen?
I thought I did, yeah. You're on. Okay.
Let me ask, can you see my slide presentation?
No, your slide presentation's not up yet, no.
I think we might need to share the screen, Peter. A command didn't come through to share it.
No, that's got...
Okay, let me try something at this end, Pete.
Yeah, you're on there now.
We got it now?
Yep.
Good stuff. Well, thanks, Peter, and welcome, everyone. And certainly good afternoon. My name is Mark Holton, and what I'd like to do is spend a little bit of time talking to you about the business advisory software dilemma. And I call it a dilemma because many accounting firms talk to me about what should I buy, how should I use it, how will I position it, how will I implement it. But I'd like to talk to you today about a couple of different things. One, and that is the strategy behind your software acquisition. And secondly, we're going to have a bit of a look at what the industry is using in 2020 from a recent survey that was completed. I think one of the great challenges with advisory software is the fact that now, these days, very different than when I started in the advisory game 25 years ago, but these days there's a vast array of software and solutions in the market. They're all designed to assist accountants to provide initial and engaging advisory services to clients. In fact, Pete, if I've heard so many times in the past, this bit of software is going to turn you into an advisor, which honestly does my head in. But we're seeing a lot out there. At first glance, they might all look like the same. Understanding the differences, more so from a positioning perspective, more so from a service perspective, and I suppose more so from what are you going to do with them and how you're going to use them with your client perspective, I think is one of the critical challenges to get the right tools, to do the right task, to deliver the right service to your clients. The challenges that I've seen when it comes to advisory software and solutions. Number one, the majority of tools these days are all cloud-based. Some of them are still PC-based, but there's certainly a plan there to move it to a cloud-based solution. So integration of data, collaboration of data, linking into your clients' accounting systems to extract information is now not only possible, but it's probably good practice. We've got to start to look at how do we integrate software into your advisory workflow. Every accounting firm I've worked with and worked in have a workflow for compliance. It's systematic, it's process driven, it's structured, and there's good people behind it to execute it. When it comes to advisory as an industry, guys, we are too laissez-faire with how we're approaching it. It's often added on to something. It's often done when the time is right, when I'm less busy. There has to be a structured workflow process. One of my other concerns with software in this space is the fact that, yes, we can now integrate it with our client accounting software. My question to you this afternoon is this: what if the client accounting software is not correct? Then I'm integrating it with data that's not going to tell the right story to a client. As an advisory accountant, you are a storyteller. We have to go back and start to think about, how do I become more effective in this space? Certainly integrating accounting software will save time, will save effort, but we've got to start to look at, does the software, does the data tell the right story? And if not, we've got to make changes. I see a lot of accounting firms these days buying software, then it becomes what I call shelfware. Hard to be called software when it never gets off the shelf. So the failure to implement rate here is quite high. In the old days, because I'm a dinosaur, we used to buy software and pay for it up front. Heaven forbid. These days, we buy it on a subscription model. And when we realize we're not using it, we turn off the switch. It's a lot easier to fail to implement these days than it was in the past. In the past, when you've paid for it up front, there was probably more commitment to get the thing used and going. We need the right structure, and we need the right infrastructure. We need an efficient engagement and delivery model. If those issues aren't addressed, the likelihood of this becoming shelfware, in my mind, accelerates. To get advisory going, and I've said it in previous sessions that I've done for ESS BIZTOOLS, we need the right systems, we need the right processes, and we need the right people. Once we've addressed that, we need to look at smart software solutions that can help us deliver the services that we've got to the clients that we've engaged in a firm that knows what it's offering, how it's offering, what it costs, and can explain it effectively to a client, and has a model for implementation that addresses the two critical issues here, and that's commitment and capacity. That's when it really becomes effective. We've got to start to look for champions. If we're going to have a solution for X, a solution for Y, a solution for Z, is the champion the same person, or should they be different people? So we've got to get our resources right. And probably the best tip I can give you today is take things on incrementally. Don't try to do it all at once. I've seen firms that have taken on multiple solutions and all they have is multiple failure to implements. We are accountants. We understand the profit and loss. We can't be expending dollars rather on solutions and not getting recovery. We should be looking at what's our return on investment on anything we do in our accounting firms with clients. And this is what we need to address up front. So, Pete, do we go for a broad-based or a single solution? I get this question all the time. Some suppliers offer what I call a broad-based cloud solution that endeavours to cover, if not all, certainly a number of advisory needs. I think ESS BIZTOOLS is a great example of that. Other providers will bring solutions that might do a bit of succession planning, a little bit of financial analysis, a little bit of dashboard work, a bit of estate planning. And looking at that broad-based solution, they all operate from one essential database, and there is consistency of use and process in that decision. You can purchase them incrementally as well. If you look at the majority of accounting firms when it comes to compliance, we generally pick and stick. We generally pick a solution, and that solution then becomes the suite that we use for compliance purposes. When it comes to advisory, often it's too disjointed from a purely strategic structure point of view. Maybe looking at a broad-based solution might be the answer, but not necessarily. Let's look at the other option, and that is we go for a single solution. For instance, if we intend to offer things like budgets and cash flows, which I call action plans, projections to clients? Do we move away from the accountant's love tool? Well, that's Excel. And you'll see why it's the love tool in a moment. Do we look for a specific solution that does budgets and cash flows? Well, I think that's a good idea, providing you're doing a lot of them. Okay, if you're only doing half a dozen of them, then there's no better tool to use than Excel or your client accounting software anyway. But that's a decision you've got to make in your firm. Obviously, it can be more expensive if we're going to buy a solution for this. If we want to do estate planning, do we go and look for an estate planning solution? I had a firm recently said to me, what would you recommend for succession planning? Well, then it comes back to, do you want to buy a succession planning tool, or do you want to buy a suite of services that offers succession planning? So we've got to get some smarts around these decisions. Okay, and obviously, best of breed doesn't offer a holistic consistency of use and process, because then we're going to need a champion, are we not, for estate planning, succession planning, budgets and cash flows, and for that matter, everything else that needs to be done. So the point I wanted to make here before we start to look at what the industry is using is there needs to be some strategic thought applied to what are you going to offer in your firm? How are you going to offer it? To whom you're going to offer it to? How will you explain the benefit of that service to a client in a manner they can follow? Do you package those solutions, and how are you going to price those solutions? Ultimately, in my mind, what it also comes back to is, are your clients the type of clients that you can show something to and then say, go away and do it, and then be confident that they can in fact do that stuff? Or do they need support? I had a firm recently say to me, we've got a lot of clients with cash flow issues that have escalating debtor receivable management issues. Okay, we tell them this, we say they need to work on it, we see them in a couple of months' time, they've done nothing. And that's the whole point of you being an advisor, is to keep on top of them, provide ideas, provide solutions, provide something that can help them do what they can't do themselves in a variety of different areas. So when it comes to solutions, we also need to be thinking about the delivery process, and then from the delivery process, the follow-up process, the support process as we move forward. So I know I've only got 20 minutes today, and I certainly won't take any more than that. But one thing I wanted to show you was a very recent poll that I managed to get my hands on. It was done by Business Fitness, who do some wonderful work. I presume everybody online today at some stage has had a look at their good, bad and ugly report. Okay, and I think it's one of the best investments you can make is to understand what the rest of the industry are doing and how you can benchmark your firm to that. A couple of other key solutions out there to help you with that as well. But this was a modern technology insight poll that Business Fitness often do. And that's focusing on an aspect of the accounting industry and what are firms using. I would strongly recommend you guys today downloading the entire report and have a look at it, because it talks about what are firms using when it comes to tax software, workflow software, document management software, practice management solutions, etc., etc. But all I wanted to do today was focus on what the industry is using when we talk that magical word of advisory. So let's have a look at one particular aspect of that report. The thing that I also liked about this report was that the information was broken up to revenue size per firm, from up to 500K to $4 million plus. And let's all be reassured, the accountant's love tool, Excel, the tool that we all love. What do accountants love doing more than anything? A spreadsheet. It still has incredibly good usage at all levels of accounting firms, irrespective of the revenue size. 46% at the lower end of town, 52% at the higher end of town, and you can see the numbers there. I love Excel, but I know it takes a lot of heavy lifting. to put the information in there and maintain the information. But it's still a very effective advisory tool. I won't go through all the ones on screen because you can see this, and obviously you can get a downloaded copy of the report. Anybody that knows me knows that my first purchase of software in the accounting industry 25 years ago was a tool called Optimist, which later became MYOB Profit Optimizer. It staggers me that it's still being used to the extent you see on screen. Okay, because it hasn't been updated for years. It's not a cloud-based solution, but in fairness, there's nothing wrong with it. And often if it's not broken, why are we worried about fixing it? So firms are still using Profit Optimizer, not many, but at the high end of town, about 6% of those type of firms are saying, look, I still use this product. Other great dashboard products, reporting products that you see on screen. Valuation tools, okay? Cash flows and budgets. When you look at Castaway, for example, which is a cash flow and budgeting tool, great bit of software. At the bottom end of town, not many firms using it because they're probably using Excel. Starts to increase as the revenue size of the business jumps up there. Cash flow story, one of the best tools I've seen in the market. It's the accountant designed tool that replaced Profit Optimizer in my head. So again, small end, not much, higher end, a little bit more usage. In other, okay, what I think hasn't been done here is we haven't looked at the solutions that can actually help you and your clients execute the plans that you put in front of them. And that's where I see ESS BIZTOOLS fitting in. If a client has an issue with attracting government grants, look at that as a solution. If a client has an issue with debtor management and needs support around how to collect debtors and doesn't want to go and pay a provider to do so, but wants to put an infrastructure within their business, look at the tools that can help you execute the plans. If we keep telling clients to do X, not following them up and not putting smart solutions in front of them to help them do whatever X is, believe me from experience, the longevity of the advisory engagement is put under pressure. There's also a variety of other tools, I presume, sitting in other. Interestingly, not applicable. At the small end of town, 30% of firms are saying, I don't use advisory software. Okay, but I wonder how many of them are using Excel. If I get a client walking through the door and saying, I need a budget and cash flow for the bank, what do they pull out to use? Probably Excel. So they are using advisory software. Okay, when you look at the higher end of town, much, much fewer firms, okay, do not have advisory software. So I thought that was interesting to look at those things. And I compliment Business Fitness for doing these insight polls. I think they're fascinating. And they give us a bit of an understanding of what's going on. The other poll that I pulled out of this report that I wanted to show
Mark,
you.
can I just interrupt for a moment? We've had a comment or a question. The $4 million that's mentioned there, that's total practice income, isn't it? It's not just advisory income?
That's right, it's total revenue.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Revenue. Yeah. Now, I think that's a good indicator, Pete.
Yeah.
I really do. The other thing I want to share with you today, guys, is what decisions are firms making around their next software purchase or solution purchase. And this is also part of the Business Fitness report. Interestingly, again, broken up into the same revenue domiciles. Client portals, that's getting a lot of interest out there. Okay. I mean, let's be honest, we're one of the few countries that allow information to be sent through unsecured networks. A lot of the other North American professional bodies and countries will not allow that. So portals are a very important part of accounting practice management and the dissemination of data to and from accountants. Doc management, integrated work papers, I'll let you look through that. But let's go down to what we're talking about today, and that's business advisory software. 20% of the smaller end of town are saying that their next purchase is more likely to be advisory. Same in the next category, 12% in the 1.5 to 4, and a quarter, roughly, of $4 million firms are saying that from an advisory perspective, we need to look at smart solutions. That's encouraging for someone that's been trying to champion the advisory message in the industry for many, many years. So when I read through that, I looked at other things that are effective. What also worries me is that none of the above has far too much in there. So is that saying firms aren't thinking about what the next solution is to improve efficiency and to produce quality services that we offer? But I challenge you to get a copy of this report. I challenge you to start to think about, okay, from a strategic point of view, what do you want to do with advisory? And I challenge you to look at all the great solutions out there as well. And Pete, as I often say, anybody that wants to have a chat to me can contact you and you'll put me in contact with them if you want to have a bit of a chat about what suits you. With that in mind, from a conclusion perspective, my first recommendation is don't take on too much. Adopt products incrementally, and more importantly, run your advisory services through a CRM. Did you notice that nowhere in those previous slides did it talk CRM? So how do I keep track of all the different advisory engagements, all the different limbs that I'm going to do, my quarterly board of advice meetings, monthly meetings, debtor management, creditor management, inventory management, if I have no mechanics to do so? Now, let me tell you, practice management software does not do this properly. Create the right structure in your firm, get your infrastructure right, as in who's going to do what, when, how. Get a repeatable client engagement system up and running. Nowhere did we talk that earlier. And get the delivery models in there and look for solutions that aid the service delivery. Get the right people on board. And the other thing I want to emphasize today, Pete, is it's all about training. When it comes to tax, we train. When it comes to advisory, it's even more important to be looking at how we offer services to particular clients in particular industries and the like. So that's my key conclusions out of the day. Pete, I know I'm out of time or very close to it. I'll say thank you and also ask, is there any questions at all from the audience so far?
Yeah, well, we've had the first one. We've clarified that. Now, I've got another question. What is your opinion on the base solutions provided by MYOB and Xero?
I think there's some wonderful add-ons to Xero. Some of the base solutions that I've seen are not bad to create an initial discussion point. MYOB for years banked their advisory service around Profit Optimizer. As we all know, that's not being used that much anymore and probably hasn't got a main focus. I think if you're going to use some of these basic tools to have a discussion with a client, they're going to work. They're going to get the message rolling. But I don't think using those tools as a strategic model, okay, is going to lend weight, and we have to be looking a little bit further afield, be it for independent solutions or add-on solutions to the MYOB, Xeros, APSs of the world.
Okay, thanks, Mark. I endorse what you had to, what you said today. One of your key comments, I think, was advisors. If you're going to offer an advisory service, there is a need to keep on top of it, isn't there? It's really, you are the de facto CFO in the business, in the company. And if you were there full time, you'd be at the beck and call of the CEO, managing director, and other key executives all day, 10 hours a day or whatever. So you can't just set a client up in this advisory world and not talk to them for 3 or 4 months and then try to pick up again. It doesn't work. So firms need to get that organizational structure sorted out, don't they?
Agree 100%, Pete. And you look, at the end of the day, you can tell a client, get your debtors down. And you can tell them you're blue in the face. The reality of life is, if they were great at collecting, they would have done it before you met with them.
That's right. That's right.
At the end of the day, it all comes back. Advice is not just telling them what to do, it's helping them do it. It's holding them accountable. It's
showing
measuring
their team how to do it. Yeah. Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you for the questions, and we will now move on. So thanks very much, Mark. Are you staying with us?
Pete, I've got to go, but if you need me at all, you know to get me.
We'll get any questions through to you. So thank you very much.
Pleasure, Pete. Okay. All the best, Matthew.
Thanks, mate.
Okay, so it's my pleasure now to introduce Matthew Karakalakis. Matthew is the Principal Solicitor and Partner of AMK Law in Adelaide and Melbourne. Good afternoon, Matthew.
Good afternoon, Peter. It's a pleasure to be here, and I've had the fortunate opportunity of speaking already through your ESS BIZTOOLS series, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here again.
So welcome, and you're going to talk to us about key intellectual property law principles. So you're on screen, so welcome.
Thanks, Peter, and thanks for everyone that's joining us online in this video, or even if you're watching later on through Facebook and the like. What I want to do just to start off with is I'd like to first give an acknowledgement to the traditional owners of the land in which we're in today, and pay our respects to our Indigenous elders past, present and future. Now, I would also like to share my screen because I have a presentation to go through as well.
Yeah, you're on there now, Matthew.
Yep, so you can see the presentation there now?
Yes, thanks, yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So I'm the founder and director of AMK Law. I'm also a proud Aboriginal man with my family heritage from Narungga Nation, from the Yorke Peninsula in South Australia. My father is Greek, and I've spent more than 15 years in the legal profession, working to empower people's legal positions. And we've got a firm, AMK Law. We're a multi-award-winning commercial and litigation firm, helping businesses in their commercial, intellectual property, dispute resolution needs. We've also got an excellent product that we'll go into at some point in this presentation today, because it flows on nicely with the software theme that we had the pleasure of hearing a little earlier. The point is, we've got this product called Boost Legal Templates, and it's designed for Australian small business. Boost Legal Templates, it actually gives clarity, safety and access to real quality legal templates, and it's all available online through an easy questionnaire process. But we'll get to that in a bit more, because what I want to first of all do is give you an understanding of intellectual property law. I want to show you how you can protect and enforce your intellectual property rights. And I also want to give you some insight so that you can walk away from today's presentation and from our time together now as well, with that level of insight and understanding to know how you can have your intellectual property requirements properly met. First up, I want to give you a couple of quotes that I really enjoy to get into our theme of intellectual property. The first one is someone called James Boyle, the public domain inclusion the commons of the mind. And what he said was, at the moment, everyone gets a copyright as soon as the work is written down or otherwise fixed, whether they want one or not. And Kaylin C. Kankanala said, the inventors do not sit on their inventions. And I like both of these quotes, particularly because a lot of people don't understand that copyright automatically comes about. As the creator of copyright materials, you get the benefit of copyright. And also like the second quote that I shared, because in today's day and age, intellectual property is perhaps more important, perhaps more significant than ever. So we need to not sit down on our laurels, but instead make sure that our intellectual property rights are fully and properly protected. Now, what is intellectual property? I've been speaking about having protection for our intellectual property rights, but what even is intellectual property? Well, it does come in various forms, but you can think about intellectual property as being the property of your mind or proprietary knowledge. It's basically the productive new ideas that you create It can be an invention, it can be a trademark, it can be a design, a brand, or the application of your idea. That definition and explanation of intellectual property is almost a quote from the IP Australia website. But I do encourage people that are listening today to actually visit the IP Australia website, because there's a ton of great information on there. In Australia, intellectual property rights are protected under Commonwealth legislation as well as by the common law. And there's also some contractual rights that come into place to help with protection of intellectual property. And that's what we're going to go into a little deeper when we start touching on some of the Boost legal templates, key components, and how it assists with intellectual property. So intellectual property does come in various forms. And that's the reason why there are different types of protections for your intellectual property. I'll explain some of these for you now. First up, let's look at patents. Patents, they're the intellectual property rights that apply to inventions and to innovative ideas and concepts. There's design rights. Design rights are specifically the intellectual property that arises in connection with the design of particular shapes, patterns, frameworks, configurations, and products. Then we have copyright. Copyright is the intellectual property that exists in the original form of an expression. So what that really means is copyright doesn't come from just an idea. There has to be some creation, some effort, some work that's actually created from the author. Copyright is the right to reproduce, for copy, and pursue related rights of an original expression of an idea. And there was a really famous case called Pacific Film Laboratories and the Federal Commissioner of Taxation. It's a 1970 High Court decision. And I just refer to this on this slide here now, because if you want to do some reading in this area, it's a really good case to look at, because it sets out the principles about what an original expression of an idea really means. So copyright, that comes in the form of literary, drama, music, and artistic works, sound recordings, films, published editions of books and the like, as well as broadcasts, are all the subject of copyright protection. We have plant breeders' rights. Plant breeders' rights are the intellectual property in connection with certain varieties of plants. We have Indigenous cultural and intellectual property, ICIP. That's really about the legal rights that Indigenous mobs have to protect traditional arts, stories, dance, language, and culture. There's information, things like confidential information, privacy. They're really important to consider in this area as well. Trademarks themselves are perhaps the most prevalent and most common form of intellectual property that we come across. Trademarks, they're all about protecting a word, a phrase, logo, sound, smell, a shape, a picture, or any combination of these. But most commonly you'll see trademarks protecting a name. So for example, if your business has a business name that you want protected, or if you've got a particular product in your business and you want the name of that product to be protected, trademark is the way to go about achieving this. Think about it this way, think of McDonald's. Even the word McDonald's is subject of copyright. The golden arches, the symbol, that's also the subject of copyright. So, sorry, the subject of trademark. So the word and the symbol are both capable of being the subject of trademark protection. And you can register your trademarks through IP Australia. Or what you can also do, and what's advisable in the trademark registration process, is to get advice from a lawyer that can help you in this way, because the registration process can be quite complex and there's a number of steps to that process. Objections can be raised by third parties, and there's a whole variety of conundrum that can be created through that registration process unless it's done right. Now, once a trademark is registered, the owner of the trademark has the right to exclusively use that brand name or symbol or the intellectual property in that trademark, and authority can also be given to other people to use the trademark. We'll go into some of the ways of doing that a little later in this presentation. So, why would you want to protect and enforce your intellectual property rights? Well, remember this, your intellectual property is valuable because it is a significant business asset. It's taken time, it's taken resources, you've worked hard to establish, develop, and maintain your intellectual property. So you really do need to protect your intellectual property so that you can have the benefit of what you've created for yourself and your business. How do we protect our intellectual property? Well, the main ways to protect your intellectual property include understanding your legal rights at common law, going through the intellectual property registration requirements, having legal agreements in place. And that's precisely where Boost Legal Templates comes into it. See, on Boost Legal Templates, there's affordable legal templates available. It's boostlegaltemplates.com.au. And these template legal documents have been written by either myself or other top Australian lawyers. And the documents available cover a variety of needs that Australian small businesses have. The documents give clarity, safety, and access so that you can have your intellectual property as well as other legal rights covered. So yes, there are intellectual property license agreements available on that website, but there's other agreements as well, like service agreements, contractor agreements, plus more. But let's touch on now a little bit about the intellectual property license agreement process, because remember, an intellectual property license agreement is one of the best ways of actually earning revenue through a license fee for the intellectual property that you've created. Now, I've just got a couple of easy screens here for you to see, follow, and understand, because these are the questions that come up when you go through the easy questionnaire process on Boost Legal Templates. If you choose to create the IP license agreement, you'll be asked how many licensors will be there and how many licensees will be there. Essentially, the licensor is the person who's licensing out the intellectual property. The licensee is the person who's paying for that right. You can license out a whole variety of those intellectual property rights. So remember those categories of intellectual property we were speaking about earlier? They're also covered by the intellectual property license agreement. You just need to choose whether it's an invention, registered design, trademark, an unregistered business name, a registered business name, domain, a social media account, software, etc. You can choose these items easily through the questionnaire process when you go to Boost Legal Templates. You can also choose further detail to go deeper into that specific intellectual property. So for example, if you're licensing out a social media account, you can choose the number of accounts. You can describe the account. You can also cover particular things, like whether or not you want to include moral rights if the copyright is the subject of intellectual property that you're licensing out. And you can also choose the type of license that's being granted. See, when you go through the process on Boost Legal Templates, the questionnaire is written in a really easy to understand form with explanations as you go, to not only make sure it's all covered, but to make sure that you're getting the information to help you through the process. It's almost like having your personalized online legal advisor going with you step by step. So if you are going through the licensing process on Boost Legal Templates, it asks you, what exactly do you want to allow the license grant to apply to? So do you want the license to be for particular activities? Do you want to limit the license to a particular geographical territory? So for example, you can choose to license your intellectual property throughout the world, in Australia and in other places. One of the other questions that will come up in the questionnaire is the question about what fee you would like to charge. Because you can actually set that fee to be charged, and that's what you get paid in return for the license that you're giving. The license itself is what gives the right for someone else to use your intellectual property. When you give out that license, one of the questions that will come up will ask you, do you want to have a particular period for your license, or do you want it to last forever? Now on this slide here, we've got the license fees. So it will ask you about your fee. Do you want to include a fee? Do you want to allow the person to have control over your intellectual property? You can also ask whether or not you want to have warranties. So warranties can be things like whether you want the other party to the agreement to warrant they don't have any other intellectual property that's going to be in breach of your intellectual property rights and things like that. You can also have protections such as indemnity. So indemnities really mean that if there's any breach of the agreement or anything wrong happens, they need to pay you for that penalty happening. And you can choose those situations as part of the questionnaire process. Now, in today's day and age, we have people from all around the country. What that means is there's different states' laws that can apply. So with intellectual property, the laws that apply for a particular state really come into play and are a bit more important when it comes to resolving any dispute type situations. One of the benefits of the questionnaire process on Boost Legal Templates is you can actually choose your own state. So if you're in Victoria, you can choose that Victorian law applies to your own individualised IP licensing agreement, which is a really good thing. It gives you that flexibility so that your agreement is tailored specifically the way that you need it most. Now, I hope this presentation has been really helpful with your understanding of intellectual property laws, and I hope you've got some insight about the different types of categories that intellectual property law rights actually belong to, because we've touched on things like plant breeders' rights, copyright, patents, we've touched on trademarks, plus more. You can have the protection by common law, legislation, and through contracts. And for your contract needs, remember, you can check out boostlegaltemplates.com.au because it's specifically designed for Australian small businesses to give you the safety and access to real quality legal templates for you and your business. And what we're doing as a special bonus for today is you can use the code ESS BIZTOOLS and get 10% off any of the templates that are on the website, which is already a fantastic saving because normally if you're going to get an IP licensing agreement, it can be $2,000 or more. Whereas on Boost Legal Templates, I think they're less than $200 as an example. But then on top of that, you'll get the ESS BIZTOOLS discount. Also, proceeds from each of the Boost Legal Templates documents that are purchased goes to support Indigenous computer literacy. So you can know that you've played your part in providing a learning hub through the arrangement that we've got in place with .com Mob. So I hope that you've really enjoyed today's presentation, and I will leave you with another quote that I really like, which is from Albert Einstein. He said, "Try not to become a man," and I'll add, which is particularly relevant, and woman, "of success. Rather, become a man and woman of value." And that's what intellectual property is all about, the value inside of the IP. Thanks a lot for participating and being a part of watching this presentation.
Thank you very much, Matthew. That was very interesting. Congratulations on the development of Boost legal templates. Whilst I was listening to you there and looking at some of those items, some of those products are very important if a company is going to qualify for the classification of being an early stage innovation company, because there are two tests that a company has to go through. And because the company needs to accumulate a total of 100 points. So you earn 50 points if you got a patent, but you can also earn points from your trademarks and other intellectual property that you've been able to enter into commercial agreements for. So that was very interesting. And I think accountants need to be far more aware of these types of intellectual property protections that are available for businesses, because you're right in your opening comments. Intellectual property, I think, for a long time was basically ignored. In fact, you could probably claim it was ignored until very recently, couldn't you? You've only got to look at the number of patent applications that goes through these days compared to 10 or 15 years ago. It's completely been dwarfed as to for what was the position previously. So it's a good area. So
and even accountants, Peter, I know that accountants, they have their sometimes they have their subscriptions and packages, but sometimes accountants want to be able to access some quality legal template documents that they can use with their clients, you know, things like service agreements, contractor agreements, and the like. And accountants can access all them for their clients through Boost legal templates as well. Yeah.
In fact, I'll have a discussion with you separately, and we'll do a promotion of those of that product, if you like, Boost legal templates through ESS BIZTOOLS. But
we've got that arrangement with the code. Thank you. That sounds great, Peter. We've also got the arrangement in place for that discount for, you know, with the ESS BIZTOOLS code as well.
Yeah, that's very good. Okay, so thank you very much. And obviously, we've got your phone number to come up here a little bit later on. And if anyone is interested and never wrote down your details of AMK Law, if you send an email to me at Peter at ESS BIZTOOLS, I'll get the details of Matthew's contact information to you. So thank you very much, Matthew. And we'll just, I'll take the screen share back, and we'll just move on. Just to wrap up, the COVID-19 news update. Well, we've had the federal budget, and I think the government's done a reasonable job. It would not be very easy trying to frame a budget. We're accountants, and we know how difficult it is preparing a budget for a business with a turnover of $2 or $3 or $4 million. You imagine what it's like trying to do one for Australia, especially after we've had the challenges of COVID-19. And so what's come out of the budget that I think has got some application to where we are with the helping clients through the COVID-19. Research and development was one of the big issues, I thought, because research and development, I think, will be a more important issue for many of our accountants in the near future as clients start talking to you again who have been in lockdown type situations. Now, there's a lot of that in your home state, Matthew, obviously with Victoria. And I suspect some of those business people are doing some thinking on their, working on their computers, developing some new code, or in their sheds or workshops, developing another product, hopefully getting it through to a prototype stage. The government was originally trying to get some changes made to research and development legislation. They tried 2 years ago, and they got rejected by the Senate on 3 occasions, I think. And I think they've learnt something through COVID-19, that research and development needs to be encouraged. We need to get manufacturing working in Australia again. Now, admittedly, the government's not going to emphasise every industry. They've identified 6 key manufacturing segments that they are going to support from next year. $1.3 billion they've allocated to that. But if some of you have been keeping up to date with what the government was proposing on research and development, the big news is that they have rejected that legislation now that they were wanting to get through the Senate. They're not proceeding with it. The $4 million cap that they had proposed for companies with turnovers under $20 million for research and development has been withdrawn. So there's no cap. You could get more than $4 million. That means you're doing a lot of work. The R&D rate is to be 18.5% over the company tax rate. So if the company tax rate is 25%, you'd add the 18.5, 43.5%, which is exactly what the rate has been up to this stage. So research and development has at last got some certainty. And I think that's the big news that I want to bring to you today. So please don't send a client away and say R&D is too complicated. The government's wanting to make changes. The only changes now are favourable. The other big news, I think, is Chief Financial Officer Services is something that you need to closely examine. You heard Mark talk before about business advisory services. I think this is the key component of business advisory services, being able to offer a virtual CFO service to your client. You've got the software, you've got access to packages that Mark showed you before, and obviously including the ESS BIZTOOLS package, that you can deliver a great service of being the virtual CFO for your clients. And if you want to discuss that with me, please contact me. The other big news, of course, is with the instant asset write-off. Many of your clients are going to need some advice on their capital expenditure project planning, because your clients have still got to have the money, of course, haven't they? So they're either going to be borrowing this money, raising capital, or using their own internal generated cash flows to be able to take advantage of the instant asset write-off that's now available. And it's one of the key components the government's wanting people to do, to start spending money to get the economy going again. So that raises another very important question, which we've talked about on many occasions now. This is webinar number 22 in this series. If you missed the previous 21, you can go to our website and get access to them. But the big question is going to be, have your clients got enough funding in their business available to enable them to do things and take advantage? Well, the government has also introduced some weeks ago the guaranteed loans of up to $1 million that are now available that you could talk to your clients about. The applications are open until the 30th of June 21. But your clients are going to need a business plan, budgets, cash flow forecasts. And if they've got intellectual property, they're going to need summaries of the items that Matthew was just talking about to make sure that they got protection, they got ownership of that intellectual property. But there is a special loan that's available through all of the banks. Don't forget the early stage innovation company status when you're talking to your clients, please, especially those who have been doing some research and development activities during this coronavirus, because those companies have been specifically established by the government, or the status has been specifically established to help attract investors, because the investors get some tax breaks. The biggest one, of course, is the avoidance of capital gains tax on those shares if they own the shares for more than 12 months. So don't forget it, have a good look at it, or contact us where we have a full product package to guide you through the process. And the other one, of course, is crowdsource funding equity raising. We've had 5 representatives of crowdsource funding intermediary businesses participate in these webinars that we've been presenting as part of COVID-19. Those 5 companies are all geared up, ready to go. They're waiting for people to contact them to help raise capital. And they've got great track records. The initial teething problems in crowdsource funding, equity raising in Australia have been sorted out, and they're keen to help. So there's really no excuse for not being able to obtain funding for well-run companies. So let's look at an action plan. If you want to talk to Mark or Matthew about what they've talked today, there's Mark's number, 0414 411 122. If you missed the number, send me an email and we'll send you the details. Matthew's number, 0410 910 630. And I'm sure Matthew will be happy to talk to you about legal issues on intellectual property, but also on other legal matters for your businesses. So why not visit us? Please go to our website, www.essbiztools.com.au, and you can view our homepage where we have a complete directory of services which we can supply to accountants to assist you. You don't have to subscribe to everything. You can subscribe to individual packages. What we'd really like you to do is watch our video on our homepage, then book an appointment with me, a free appointment of about 60 minutes, and I will give you my honest advice on what packages I think you should start this journey with, because I really want business advisory services to become a key component of accountants services all over Australia, because that will help your small and medium-sized business clients survive. So please contact us. And that's what I just said. You can have a telephone or Zoom meeting with us to get more information. Or you can contact me. If you want to talk to me on a one-on-one basis, please ring me on 1-800-232-088 or send an email to peter@essbiztools.com.au. So next webinar is on Friday, the 23rd of October at 12 noon AEST. So that's obviously 1 p.m. in the daylight saving states on the East Coast. The presenters are myself and Paul Barnaby, who's the Australasian representative of Plan Guru and who's a prescriptive accounting consultant. Also, Paul's a chartered accountant and was the senior partner of a fairly large firm earlier in his career. We're going to talk about the challenge of prescriptive accounting. So we're going to look at the theory of maintaining better systems in debtors, inventory, work in progress, but then Paul will give you a demonstration of how to use the Plan Guru budget and cash flow software. And that's what Mark was referring to earlier. You can use Excel if you like, but a product like Plan Guru is a specially designed product to suit the preparation of budgets and cash flow forecasts. And I think you will find it is very helpful in your business. So to register for this webinar, can you please send an email to jenny@essbiztools.com.au and Jenny will fix up your registration. And more information, I think I've already told you that. So stay safe. Thank you for joining us for this webinar. If you want to have a discussion with Mark Holton or Matthew Karakalakis, please don't hesitate to contact them. Matthew, thank you very much for your participation today and good luck with that new venture.
Thanks, Peter. It was a pleasure speaking as always.
Thank you. And to everyone, stay safe. I hope the situation in Victoria is going to improve so that you can get back to normal business and normal living arrangements. And I hope some of these state borders get closely looked at so that we can help the tourism industries. I went to Cairns last week, and a city that survives on tourism is struggling at present because there's no tourists and there's no international tourists, obviously, but we'd love to see some Australian tourists back in these tourist areas because there's a lot of people got their businesses in difficult situations at present. So thank you very much. Have a great day. Goodbye. Thank you, Matthew.
Thanks, Peter. And we should have a chat sometime about
Yeah,
sort of.
I'll give you a ring next week, eh?
All right.
Okay,
Have a good day.
thank you. Bye-bye.